Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Powerplay Tuesday class. We've got a very exciting topic for you today, actually one of my favorite topics to teach on, which is specialty plans, specifically education savings and health savings accounts, and how you can apply that into self-directed investing. A lot of the time when we talk about self-directed accounts, you hear the term self-directed IRAs, but there are other types of qualified plans that you can use to self-direct these funds into real estate. And so we're going to talk through the two that Quest administers, which is education savings accounts and health savings accounts. We'll talk through some of the benefits. And at the end, I do want to wrap up with a case study that shows how our clients are utilizing these accounts and this qualified money to make the same investments that they're already making in their IRAs as well. My name is Brianna Clayton. I am an IRA specialist with Quest. I've been working here going on 4 years now, and I'm a part of our IRA specialist team going through the consultation process for all of our new clients and those existing clients who may have some questions about the tax code and how that relates to what they would like to do within their IRAs. And so before we get into the nitty-gritty details, just a quick disclaimer, as with all presentations from Quest, this is for educational purposes only. So if you are seeking any type of legal, financial, structuring, or deal advice, certainly consult with your attorney, a CPA, or other financial professional who is qualified to provide you that type of information. So we are going to start into who Quest is as an institution, why we are talking with you here today. Well, as you may know, Quest Trust is a self-directed IRA custodian. We are currently the largest based out of the great state of Texas. I'm here talking to you today from Houston, but we do also have offices in Austin and Dallas as well. Across our 3 offices, we have about 120 employees, and across the country, about 20,000 active investor clients. Now, of those 20,000 clients, and through the 20 years that we've been in business, we've accumulated about $2.83 billion under our administration in a variety of investments, primarily real estate, but really anything that's not publicly traded can most likely be encompassed under some form of asset we currently have in our administering. About 415 million of those assets under our administration are sitting in undirected cash. We always want to highlight this fact because it is an opportunity for those of you out there who may be raising capital or seeking other sources of income for your deals. So these are individuals who have opened the IRA account, they've set everything in motion, moved the money in, and are just waiting for the opportunity to deploy this cash. So this is a really great opportunity for you, and we will talk through a few events at the very end of our presentation on how you can get involved with this group. And now, finally, something that I'm always very excited to talk about is really what makes Quest as a self-directed IRA custodian stand out. As you very well know, there are other companies who do what we do, but our focus in everything that we put out there through our online platform, YouTube, in-person networking events, and things of that nature is the focus on education. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable, clients and non-clients alike, investing in the alternative space and not limiting yourself to things like stocks, bonds, or mutual funds, some of the traditional style investments. So this is really what sets Quest apart, but we really want to break down the terminology self-directed because a lot of the times when we first get on that initial consultation call, it's the first question that we get. What makes this account self-directed? And so what's important to know about that terminology is that it really is just a marketing term. There's no legal distinction between an IRA that you would hold at a public brokerage custodian like Fidelity or Charles Schwab and an IRA that you hold with a company like Quest who allows you to self-direct it. Really, what that means is that we are dealing strictly with alternative investments, so real estate, promissory notes, syndications, any type of multifamily or non-publicly traded deal typically falls under this umbrella. So when you work with a self-directed custodian, you're working with a custodian who really allows you to dip into the broadest possible spectrum of investments, not exclusively on the public market, but now you have access to the private market as well. And to talk through some of the benefits and why you would make that transition over from an account that you've been investing your whole life into the market to something that may be a little bit more specialized. First and foremost, I think is one of the more obvious benefits, which is diversification. Being able to work your money both in the public and in the private market is a true form of diversification that allows you to not put all of your eggs in one basket, specifically when it comes to something so important like your retirement funds. Now, speaking of retirement funds, one of the largest advantages of investing through a retirement account, whether self directed or not, is the tax savings you get for doing so. So, we'll talk through very briefly some of the IRA accounts that are very typical and what the money looks like coming in and out of these plans, and how that would apply to our specialty plans like a health savings and an education savings account as well. One of the more exclusive benefits to self-directed investing is something that we like to call social investing, referring to you being able to choose where you are investing your money, maybe in a neighborhood that you hold close to your heart, pumping money into the local economy by hiring contractors in that area. So something that you may have a little bit more of a personal touch with that you may just not get out of your traditional style investments. And finally, the largest reason we see clients moving over from the public market to the private is because they are already real estate investors outside of the IRA. So this is an asset class that they dealt with, that they have the network to support, and that they trust a little bit more than the stock market, which they may feel that they don't have as much control over. So these are some of the reasons we see people making this transition. And ultimately, whenever you're looking at a self-directed IRA and why you should have one, it's really important to look at your network and see the individuals that you have around you who could potentially support the different mechanics of this account. And so let's talk through some of those very quickly. Today's focus is on specialty plans. So we're going to talk about personal and employer plans very briefly. But more than anything, I want to link these classes for you to take a look at these accounts in further depth. The most common plans we see are our personal plans, traditional IRA and Roth IRA, allowing the individual who's contributing to potentially take a tax deduction or to grow the wealth tax-free, depending on which account type you choose. These employer plans refer to high dollar contribution limits, IRAs for either self-employed individuals or for small businesses. Solo 401k in particular is going to be for a self-employed individual, but SEP and simple IRAs could potentially be set up for a small business. Now, the specialty plans in today's focus, we do have another class I want to link you to there that's going to go over some of the same information here, but a different case study. So if you're interested in some more information, I recommend checking out that class. So let's dive in to the specifics on the health savings accounts. First and foremost, this is a qualifying plan. So not just anyone can set up a health savings account. It's really important that you check these boxes in order to determine whether or not you can set it up. First and foremost, you must be covered under a high deductible healthcare plan. What's important about this is that you need to consult with your plan provider, and they can let you know whether or not your plan is classified as high deductible. It can change by provider, so it's very, very important that you speak directly with them to confirm if the details of your plan that you're covered under fall into this category. Should they fall into the category, move on to our next requirement, which is that you cannot be enrolled into Medicare. You also cannot be claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return, and you cannot be double covered or covered under someone else's healthcare plan, right? So if you check these 4 boxes, then you very well may qualify to open a health savings account. And the reason why you would want to do that is right here in the details. We call the health savings account the best of both worlds. What that really is referring to is the way the money goes in and the way the money comes out. So whenever you're putting money into an HSA, your contribution to the plan is tax deductible. That means that you are removing that amount from your taxable income for the year. You put it into the HSA plan, let's say invest it, grow it. And now all of the distributions, meaning you're taking the money out and you're putting it into your personal bank, can come out to you tax-free as long as they're for qualified health expenses. And we'll talk about what some of those are. But what's really important about this is a very exclusive benefit to this account, which is that you are essentially utilizing tax-free money to grow your plan and to pay your health expenses. So being able to deduct this on the front end, but also remove it tax-free is a very unique benefit. And it's the reason why the health savings accounts is only growing in popularity. So there are individuals out there, whether self-employed or not, who are intentionally seeking these types of high deductible healthcare plans to be covered under. Now, is it ideal for everyone? Maybe not. But for those of you who it does work in your specific situation, you're able to set up this plan, grow it through alternative investments, and then utilize all of that money completely tax-free towards your qualified health expenses. And I think you'd be surprised as to what some of these expenses come out to be. Let's take a moment to talk about contribution. So that's you putting money into the plan out of pocket. 2023, your contribution limit, if you are covered under a plan for only yourself, is $3,850. So that was a $200 increase from 2022. We are not sure if there will be another bump coming in 2024, but keep an eye out for that information later in the year. For a family, and what this means is you are covered under the healthcare plan plus one individual, whoever that may be, that contribution limit is $7,750. So we've seen an even larger increase for individuals who are covered under a family plan for their healthcare. So it's a $450 increase from last year. And then for anyone above the age of 50, you're able to contribute an additional $1,000 on top of whatever your contribution limit was to begin with. So something important to note with this is that your traditional and your Roth IRA, even your 401k, have a catch-up contribution, but it's typically at age 50. So with a health savings account, the contribution catch-up age is going to be 55. Once you pass that threshold, you can now put an additional $1,000 on top of that of tax deductible money, which is even more money to invest and grow completely tax-free. So now you know what you need to qualify for it. You know what your contribution limit is. Well, let's say you get to this point now where you are needing to utilize that money for some form of healthcare expense. Well, the IRS publication 502 goes into details about what a qualified health expense may be, but ultimately what is not covered on there is a lot of very much of a shorter list. So obviously cosmetic procedures are not covered under there, funerals, illegal substances, household help, and a few other things. But ultimately what they're saying is if it's not essentially vital for your health, if it's something that's recreational, then likely you cannot use it to pull money out, at least in a qualified manner, right? So you can use it for things like dental care, for prescriptions, co-pays, a number of different things that a health savings account can be used for. And if you take a look at the IRS publication, you'll see what the IRS loves to do more than anything, which is tell you what you can't do with it, but it doesn't very specifically tell you what you can. So as long as you're coloring within those lines, there is a wide array of different expenses that could potentially come up for you and your family throughout your lifetime that you could use this tax-free money for. So these qualified medical expenses are fairly large, and ultimately, if you have the account, there is likely some way in which you can find out how you can use that money completely tax-free. Something that's important to note is that your custodian is required on our side to file tax forms like a 1099 when you move money out of the account, also a 5498 to report what that account value is. However, whenever you submit a request to remove money from the account, you're not necessarily submitting an invoice along with that, meaning that it is a part of your job as the account holder to properly record keep why you're pulling funds out of the account. Right. So this first note, the distributions were used exclusively to pay for qualified medical expenses. So it's important that you keep the record, the invoice, the receipts that show what you were pulling the money out for. Another item on this, and this applies to other types of savings accounts out there for medical purposes, is that it has not previously been paid or reimbursed from another source, meaning that you've not pulled money out of a separate medical savings account, whatever that may be, to pay this expense, but you've solely pulled it out of this health savings account to do so. Also important for really any account that you're utilizing for health savings expenses is that you're not taking an itemized deduction for that medical expense that you're pulling money out of the account for. So these are all very important factors that you need to consider as a health savings account owner, that you're making sure that you're properly keeping up with that record keeping. And in the event of an audit, you can show back all of the paperwork that you've gathered for all of the distributions that have been taken from the plan since you've had it. So some fun facts about the HSA. Not a lot of people know, but you can transfer from a IRA to an HSA once in a lifetime. So you can only do this one time. You can transfer up to the amount of the HSA contribution limit. So depending on whether you're a single or family covered, you have the ability to transition that up to that maximum amount from an IRA directly into the HSA completely tax-free. So it's just going from one account to the other. So you're able to fund an HSA with an IRA, but you can only do it once. So certainly consider that if that is a factor that you want to have in the future. And we'll talk about why you may want to do that when we get into the case study, talking through some of the strategies that might be useful for accounts that have a lower balance in them. You can pay for prior year qualified medical expenses as long as the expense was incurred while the HSA was active. For example, if you were to create an HSA this year, but let's say your funds are tied, your HSA funds that you contributed are tied up in an investment, maybe a property, maybe lent out on a note, so you don't have access or liquidity to pull those funds out right away. Well, next year, once you do start to receive income back from that investment, the expense that you incurred in 2023, you can still reimburse yourself for in the year of 2024, right? Because the HSA was active in 2023. Maybe it didn't have the cash sitting there because it was invested, but the plan was an active plan in the year the expense was incurred. So now you can turn around within this next year and reimburse yourself for that expense. The only stipulation is that the HSA needs to be open in the year that that expense took place. So it's one of the important factors there. Now, should you need to pull funds out of the HSA for non-qualified reasons, you're going to want to pay a tax on those funds, and you'll have an additional 20% penalty assessed as well. There are some exceptions to that. Considering if you are disabled, then you may not need to pay an additional 20% penalty. But if you are going to take the funds out for non-qualified reasons, likely you're going to be paying the taxes on top of that 20% penalty. So it's a very important consideration to make that it's a very important consideration to make before you pull those funds out as to whether or not you can properly absorb that 20% penalty. Now, after you turn age 65, your HSA becomes similar to a traditional IRA, meaning that all the distributions that you take from it will be taxable, but they are not going to be penalized. So you're typically adding on whatever you're pulling out from the HSA as regular income, and you'll be paying that whenever you go to file. You can withhold at the time of distribution if you'd like. So you have an option there, but essentially it works exactly like a traditional IRA at that time, meaning that you will be taxed but not penalized as long as you've reached that 65 threshold. And let's talk about education savings accounts. The qualifications are a lot shorter. However, note that the people that can open an HSA, that's a lot of a smaller audience. So contributions can only be made to an education savings account for an individual under the age of 18. So you need to, if you are opening the plan, you need to make sure that that individual is under 18. If they are 17 years old, you can open it up. You can only contribute for the 1 year. And the individual that is listed as the depositor or the contributor for the plan needs to be under a set income limit. Now, something to note with that is that anyone can be the depositor, but if you in particular want to deposit those funds for a beneficiary under the age of 18, you need to be certain that you are under that income cap, whether you're filing single or jointly. So some of the contributions, $2,000 per child per year. Note that this is per social, meaning that you are not able to set up 2 education savings accounts for the same child and max both out. You only are able to contribute $2,000 to an ESA per child. So this has not increased in quite a while. So it's important to note that we aren't expecting it to. However, it very well may, but it has not done so in a little bit. So definitely a factor to consider in the long term. Contributions to an education savings account are after tax. That means that when you put the money in, there is not a tax deduction taken for doing so, but all qualified distributions from the plan come out to you tax-free. So this is very similar to how a Roth IRA works, where when you put money into the plan, you're not taking a tax deduction for it. But when you pull money out for qualified purposes, all the money comes out to you tax-free. So you can grow this account tax-free through a number of different investments and utilize all of this growth to pay for your children's education expenses without Uncle Sam ever really taking his piece of it. Some important factors is that after that child reaches the age of 18, you can no longer contribute to the plan for that individual. So you have two options. The first one is that you can continue to invest the account, right? Not contribute to it, but continue to make investments and grow the account. But by the time the individual that the account was open for reaches the age of 30, that account either needs to be fully depleted or it needs to be transferred to another beneficiary within the same family. So that's something to consider as well as far as long-term growth goes, is who you may have available to transfer the plan to in the event that you reach that. The account still has funds in it by the time they reach that threshold. So education savings account, what qualifies as an education savings expense? This is in publication 970. It goes over what it is that they include as a expense for educational purposes. Some of it is pretty vague, but some things that you can use it for, obviously tuition, books, fees, tutoring, any type of school supplies, uniforms, and other special expenses. This can start as early as kindergarten, so it's not just for higher education. It can be for public, private, religious schools throughout primary and secondary education as well. Things that it does not cover would be something like babysitting, sports team, clubs, anything that would be considered a hobby or an extra activity is not typically covered by health education savings account expenses. So fun facts on the ESA. A lot of people, whenever they talk about an ESA, they bring up a 529 plan as well. So ESAs can be rolled into a 529 plan, but a 529 plan cannot be rolled into an ESA. Something that separates the two here is that education savings accounts, that they can be self-directed, but 529 plans do have stricter investment requirements. So likely if you are wanting to utilize both of these options, a portion of your funds in the ESA can be, self-directed, put in real estate, grown, and then you have the option to transition that into a 529 plan later down the line. That's something that you may want to consider, as the age limit is not the same for a 529 plan as it is on an ESA. So again, if you're thinking for the long term, planning for the growth in that account in the future, well, then you can certainly utilize that strategy of potentially transitioning the ESA to a 529 plan once they hit 30, or even maybe once they hit 18, if the funds are not invested, to ensure that you're continuing to grow these accounts for educational expenses. I did briefly touch on the fact that you do need to be under the income cap in order for you to make contributions for a beneficiary. The income cap for an individual is 110, and if you're filing jointly, it is 220. Again, any individual can contribute as long as they fall under the threshold. But what's kind of a fun fact and a little bit silly is that organizations like a trust or a corporation, they can contribute to these plans as well, but there's no income limit for those entities like there is for an individual. So a business, for example, can make a contribution to an ESA for a beneficiary, and there's no set limit on how much that business can make to qualify for making the contribution. However, there is a limit for individuals who are contributing. So one of the things that came up recently within the past few years with most of our education going online, on and off, is that you can now utilize these plans to purchase a computer as well as internet access, such as Wi-Fi, for your children's expenses. In the IRS code, it actually says beneficiary or beneficiary's family. So it is pretty wide net that they cast of different expenses that you actually can use this for, especially in today's age where everything is online or virtual in some way, shape, or form. So another item that I mentioned was that these accounts can also be transferred to other members of the beneficiary's family under 30. They include, of course, siblings. They include in-laws. They also include first cousins. Again, so a wide array of individuals that this could potentially be transferred to should the individual not have depleted the account by 30, or if you're still looking to contribute to the plan and actively invest it once that individual turns 18, you can transition that to a younger sibling and continue to contribute and to invest it. And so these are some of the items that when you're looking at these two plans, important to consider the qualifications, also how much you can contribute and things of that nature. But as you can see, the contribution limits for your specialty plans are low compared to your personal plans and your employer plans. And so I see a lot of people hesitating to utilize these plans because they don't understand how they're able to utilize an account with such a low value. Well, first and foremost, it's best to get started as early as possible. Set up those education savings accounts for your kids, start contributing to them. Should you qualify for a health savings account, that is money that is going to be tax deductible when it goes in. So again, always good to get started on that end so you can ensure that you're taking full advantage of the tax deductions that are available to you out there. So you start this routine of contributing to the plans, and there are a few different strategies we've seen clients take in order for them to utilize these accounts whenever they do have this lower value. But we're going to take a moment to focus on one in particular, which is called partnering. This is exactly what it sounds like. This specific case study is for a promissory note, and there are multiple individuals and all individuals of the same family who wanted to partner on a note and put up portions of their funds on the promissory note in order for them all to have a specific layer of ownership. So let's take a look at the deal first, and we'll take a look at what the contract actually looked like. So for this particular note, the borrower requests a $30,000 loan. He's going to provide a first lien position, a 9% interest rate, but most of the money coming back to them on the back end. The scope of work is completely separate from this, meaning that he has already had put in his own personal money from the deal. He really just needs this additional $30,000 to complete the rehab for the property. So he's asked this individual if they could potentially loan him $30,000. Now, the individual that was initially approached did not want to put all of the money that he has available to them in the IRA up for the loan, but decided that this was a great opportunity to utilize his education savings account for his children, his HSA, his spouse's IRA, as well as their traditional and Roth. So here's what it looked like on the actual contract. This is an instance in which 5 separate accounts were partnered together on a contract, meaning that we see each and every IRA listed on that contract. Now, notice that each one is going to list its specific ownership percentage, and that's going to be equal to the amount that they contributed to the deal. So in this instance, $7,500 was 25% of the deal. $999 coming from an education savings account was 3.33% of the deal, so on and so forth. What that means is that once we have got this up and running and the borrower starts to make these payments back at the very end of the deal and closes that note out completely, well, each of these accounts are going to receive their rightful interest in the note. So 25% of the income goes back to the original IRA, 3.33% to the ESA, so on and so forth. So this is a way that we've seen clients partnering these multiple accounts in order for them to grow these accounts individually. Maybe that HSA and that ESA couldn't make a deal on its own, but utilizing the power of partnering, they're able to now put growth into these plans all through one investment. And so some key takeaways for that is that the borrower can send one payment to their custodian and they will divide it according to the ownership percentage. Whatever's listed on that promissory note is how we will divide the payment when it comes in. So there's it doesn't make it overly complicated for your borrower to do this. I'd say the most complicated part of the transaction is just the fact that we need to see all 5 or all parties listed on the promissory note itself, showing exactly what their percentage is. Outside of that, dividing the money that comes into these plans is very, very simple. This was a family who partnered on the note, someone who had been looking for low dollar investments for their children's education savings account, as well as their health savings account in order to start growing the plans. Over 3 months, they received an 11% return on the investment. So this is just another way for them to grow the plans. And then all profits outside of the traditional IRA that was utilized are going back into these accounts completely tax-free. The stipulation being for qualified expenses, so they will need to utilize those buckets of money as they were intended. But outside of that, they were able to receive an 11% growth into these accounts, completely tax-free in most cases. So this is something that we see happen, I see fairly regularly, to the point where it's important to really highlight the strategy so you know that there are mechanisms out there for you to grow these plans without you having the full amount available in that one account. Another takeaway for this one is that the loan was secured, right? So in this instance, should anything have gone wrong, they did have recourse to still receive money back into the plan. This is, of course, an option for the account holder. You choose the terms of your loan because you are essentially acting as the bank in this instance. You get to choose what that looks like for you, what the maturity date is, what the interest rate's going to be. You choose the borrower, the collateral. All of this can be negotiated between you and the individual you are looking to work with. So you have a lot of control over what this investment is going to look like when you receive the money back into the account and how that growth is going to look like for each individual account that is involved. The one thing I always want to mention is that you cannot award any higher percent of ownership than funds put up for the deal. So for example, going back to this ESA could only contribute 3.33% of the principal amount, meaning that this ESA can only receive 3.33% of the income as well. So it's really important that you keep these lines very strict whenever you are partnering on a deal such as this. It also extends to things such as a purchase of a property. Now, looking at a contract, if you were to have 5 accounts partnered just like this, obviously the income needs to be split along these percentages, but an important note is that all of the expenses that property may generate, such as property taxes, will also need to be split amongst these percentages. In most cases, notes don't have any type of expenses that come up. Sometimes they do, but it's very unlikely. And so expenses may not be as large of a concern if you're lending out of the account, but specifically if you're owning property through it or really any type of investment that could potentially generate these expenses, it's really important to know that you may need some sitting cash in the accounts to utilize for those expenses as they come up. So that's just something to keep in mind on the direct ownership versus loaning and not owning. You can utilize these strategies depending on what you have available to you in those accounts and overall who you're working with and how that will be structured for the individuals you have going in on the deal. So let's talk a little bit about what Quest can do. I want to actually, before doing that, take a moment to answer some questions here. Will slides be available now or later? So if you actually are on our YouTube page right now, it's going to be posted directly after this. So everything that we have is archived through our YouTube and our Facebook page. So I do recommend that you check out all of our videos that we have archived there. So can more than one contributor make a $2,000 contribution to the account? Essentially, the contribution limit is per beneficiary social. So if there's one child, even if multiple people are contributing, that child can only receive $2,000. Doesn't matter how many people are contributing to the plan, they can only receive $2,000 for one tax year. So it's really important to note on that end that you cannot make an excess contribution without potential penalties for doing so. So you want to make sure that it's limited to that $2,000 per kid per year. Can I transfer funds between my employer's HSA and Quest Trust HSA back and forth? You certainly can. So if you have your HSA elsewhere, wherever your employer has that established, it's typically as simple as putting in a transfer request. They refer to the movement between HSAs as a direct transfer, meaning that it's like accounts. The only thing that you need to know with that is that it needs to be initiated by the receiving custodian. So what that would mean is you would establish the HSA with Quest and then submit a transfer form to us. We'll process that, send it to your current custodian, and then they can transfer the funds directly into your Quest Trust HSA. And then that movement, again, being a direct transfer, it's not even reported to the IRS. It's just a movement between custodians as far as the IRS is concerned. And then if there are any other questions, feel free to put them in. I'm going to run through some of these closing slides here. As a self-directed IRA custodian, Quest Trust Company is able to utilize education as a way to help you grow your wealth tax-free. We want to put out information to you that helps you feel comfortable in moving forward, makes you really understand the mechanics and some of the restrictions that the IRS places on the accounts. We provide this education every week on Tuesdays and on Saturdays. So you've joined us today for our Tuesday Powerplay class. We're typically here at noon every Tuesday Central Time, and that actually extends directly over to our self-directed IRA Saturday class, noon Central. We are live on our YouTube page talking through different asset classes that you can use your self-directed IRA for. And more importantly than anything, case studies. I think that those are really important to see how individuals out there are actually applying these case studies to their everyday investments. And there's a lot of great strategy highlights looking through those as well. In addition to some of the education we do, we focus on networking because, like I said, there are a lot of individuals out there who understand how it works and they want to move forward, but they may not yet have the opportunity available to them to deploy the capital. And so there are certain opportunities through Quest and other real estate groups out there where you can network with other individuals who do have those opportunities, or on the other side of things, who have the cash to deploy and they're looking for the person to work with. So we'll mention a couple of those events in a moment. And then on the Quest side of things, we are a custodian who can process an investment within 24 to 48 hours. We don't charge any expedite fees for that. That is just our typical processing time. So this will allow you to put into place the account itself, move it over when you're ready to do it, and then get that investment funded within a quick 24 to 48 hours of having that account aged properly, about a week for it to do so. And then we can get that investment made according to the agreement that you and the person that you're working with has come to. Some of the classes I want to talk about. First one, my favorite one, is our virtual networking happy hour. So this is a Zoom call that we put on the fourth Wednesday of every month. It does go on at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and it's essentially a place for people to talk about what it is that they want, what the current market looks like, any deals that they may have upcoming, and really get to get in touch with those investors all over the country. This is not specific to Texas. We have people who are logging in all over the country to talk about some of the deals that they have, maybe what they're looking for. And that way you can get in touch with investors all over the country and talk about some of the opportunities that could be out there. We have our self-directed Saturdays, again, every Saturday at 12 p.m. Central. You can register through our website for that. And should you miss the class, including this one, maybe you tuned in a little bit late, check out our YouTube and Facebook page. It's streamed live and then posted there right after. And that is about all that I have for you today. I'm going to include my contact information here on screen for you to get in touch with us. One of our IRA specialists, Freeman, is putting our website in the chat. If you'd like to check us out there, you can take a look at some of the events that we have upcoming. In particular, I do want to point out a few for those of you who have been familiar with Quest, and you have gone to our events in the past. There are a few that we have upcoming that are really, really important. First one I want to talk about is the Quest Expo. This is taking place in June of 2024. We are bringing it back. We did take a year off to grow this one bigger and better than ever. We had upwards of 800 attendees at our last event in Houston. This time we're going to be hosting it in Irving. So for those of you not familiar with the area, close to Dallas, Texas, and you'll be able to network with all of the individuals coming there. We've got a lot of great speakers lined up. We're hoping to release that agenda to you shortly, but you can sign up for the newsletter and we'll send those updates out to you for that expo. It's looking to be a really, really great event. We have a beautiful venue and we would love to have you out for that. So if you check us out through the QR code, it'll give you all of the information we currently have and it'll keep you up to date on all of the information we'll be releasing here very shortly on the event. I also want to take a moment to talk to those of you out there who are planning on opening accounts, not only for yourself, or maybe you have an account for yourself and you're looking to open accounts for your family as well. We have a gold family plan that essentially is encompassing all of the new accounts that you would add to a singular plan. So it's one account maintenance fee. You have specialized service through our gold family department. That is expedited processing for all of your investments, your fair market valuations. They send annual reminders for required minimum distributions. They let you know if, for whatever reason, the investment documentation is not in good order, needing expired promissory notes, matured investment documents, and things of that nature. We also have a lot of really cool local events for our gold family plan holders, where you'll be able to network with other individuals that are a part of the plan through certain dinners and specific events for those individuals. So something I highly encourage you to check out on our side. I have a lot of great information for you. I'm going to have Freeman post our IRA specialist email in the chat. We encourage you to send us your questions there. You can also schedule right through my calendar through this link. And just let us know if there's anything that we can do or haven't answered for you through this webinar today. But that is about all I have. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your Tuesday to join us. We will see you at same time, same place on Saturday.